about just how big a network this is. We think of PlayStation primarily as a gaming device, but it is a means by which gamers, I suppose others, could communicate.
110 million users, 65 million active users, 25 million Sony PlayStation consoles out there. Look, we don't know for sure if a console was found in the aftermath of these attacks. There have been some reports on that, but we haven't been able to confirm that. What has been said is authorities in Belgium have said that they believe before this happened, that they believe that ISIS supporters, ISIS terrorists, use PlayStation to communicate. Now, there are a number of ways to do that. You can send private messages via the PlayStation Network. You can actually talk, voice calls, essentially, within the game. You can communicate within various games. There's also been suggestions that, you know, in Call of Duty, you could spray a message in bullets on a wall. These are very violent games, and they're very actually difficult to monitor. One of the things that we learned in the Snowden revelations is that the FBI and the CIA have actually tried to infiltrate these networks. We don't know what kind of success they've actually had, but because they believe that potential terrorists have been communicating via these networks, law enforcement has had some sort of a position there.
So there are so many ways to communicate. The network is so vast. When you think about why this would be a challenge for people in intelligence, is it because of how secure that network is, how vast it is, or is it just because you've got people in intelligence who may not know their way around these gaming systems? It's just another world to them.
Well, I mean, so on a gaming network, you can basically be hiding in plain sight. I mean, you're completely anonymous, essentially. Maybe you have a troll avatar or a unicorn avatar. And, you know, like they say, it's still difficult to monitor voice phone calls on cell phones. So you can imagine within a gaming network just how messy and difficult it can be to navigate that. And, you know, there is some skepticism about how much ISIS supporters would actually be using something like this. There are secure and encrypted messaging apps out there, like Telegram, for example, is the very messaging platform that ISIS used to claim responsibility for these attacks. It's much easier to communicate, for them to communicate on those apps. So it's difficult to know what kind of success law enforcement has actually seen in tracking down terrorists in gaming networks specifically.
When you look at the array of gaming platforms out there, does Sony stand out? Does it offer more communication capability than other companies do?
Well, Sony is the one that's standing out right now just because it was specifically mentioned by, intelligence officials in Belgium. Yes, but, you know, it's also been pointed out that Microsoft's Xbox, you can do the same sort of communicating on that. Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Activision has come out previously saying that, look, they don't allow intelligence officials to monitor gamers on their platforms. If they were monitoring U.S. citizens, for example, they'd have to have specific permission to do so. So again, it's very murky, but certainly could present another opportunity for these guys to communicate sight unseen.
When you look at Sony, the corporation, does it have any sort of history of working with governments when it comes to communication like this? Are they in a new position here, or have they been here before?
So Sony obviously found themselves in a very difficult situation with the hack attacks. And, of course, they have to communicate with law enforcement. They have to, when they are solicited by requests, they have to respond to those requests coming from law enforcement. But they also have a very difficult line to walk when it comes to the privacy of their users. Of course, you know, if you're looking at 110 million users, the vast majority of those people aren't doing anything wrong, so they have to weigh those concerns.
Just reading this, I was thinking back to Second Life, which seems like so
long
ago
now, just
a few years ago, but a place where the government realized all of this action was happening here, and they had to show some effort to find their way around it.
Right. Second Life is another one, this, you know, old school sort of virtual reality game where apparently, you know, has been some good fodder for potentially terrorist communications. Again, we don't know. That's why, you know, the CIA and the FBI are looking into it. It's something that we're definitely going to dive into more on Bloomberg West, and also talk about the role of social media. You know, on the one hand, you had, you know, people opening their doors on Twitter, providing shelter to people in Paris. On the other hand, you've got, I read one statistic, 90,000 accounts on Twitter by ISIS supporters, not all of those active. But, you know, Twitter is also a place where, you know, they've been communicating.
And Facebook changing its check-in procedures.
Exactly.
Friday.